welcome to the Research Works podcast, live from the European Academy of Childhood Disability Conference 2024 in Bruges, Belgium. Join us for interviews with keynote speakers, world-renowned researchers and clinicians, and behind-the-scenes stories from one of the great paediatric conferences in the world.
Well, I have to say I am pretty starstruck at the moment. I am speaking with someone that I have looked up to, read all their papers about, have attended courses on. Rick Lieber, hello and welcome.
Hello, welcome.
So lovely to finally speak with you. I know it was a bit of a kerfuffle trying to find you and all those things, but thank you for sparing some of your time. Your time is always very, very valuable. So we're going to get stuck straight into it because whenever people mention your name, obviously we're going to talk about muscle. And if we want updates on where the latest research is on muscle, I feel like the best source is to talk with you. So
Sure.
Big opening question, where are we up to? What's happening in muscle?
So I think there are a couple of new areas. I think in general, there's consensus that muscles from kids with cerebral palsy and probably maybe even patients with upper motor neuron lesions, the muscles have trouble growing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's leading to the contractures. The big unanswered question is, how does a brain injury lead to a primary muscle problem?
Yes.
So we have measured structural problems over the years, fibrosis, sarcomere length changes, and stuff like that. But just recently, I think we have a new kind of biological understanding of kinds of things that are going wrong in the muscle. And I think there's two big things that are going to be future areas of research and potentially therapy.
Right.
The biggest one, I think, is this whole idea of muscle stem cells in cerebral palsy. Have you heard that story?
Yes, I've heard that. Please go into it.
So a couple of colleagues of mine and I, a few years ago, published a paper showing that in kids who have contractures, and that's where most of our data comes from because they have surgery, kids who have contractures have a lower number of muscle stem cells compared to kids who don't. And that's bad because you need stem cells for muscles to grow, to adapt, to recover, to remodel.
Yep.
To even respond to exercise, stem cells play a role.
Yeah.
So if you're down on stem cells by number, that's really bad news. Bad news for therapists because they can do all the splinting, stretching exercises they want.
Yeah.
But we sometimes say the muscle's biologically inactivated, so you're toast. It's bad news.
Yeah.
And what's more, my colleague Andy Domenichetti recently showed that even once you take the stem cells out and try to grow them, they don't grow correctly. So the remaining stem cells are messed up.
Right.
And what happens is you take them out of the muscle biopsy and put them in a dish. They proliferate like crazy, but they don't turn into muscle. They just proliferate.
Don't they?
So Andy's, I think, key insight was, okay, let's see. This is a stem cell that's hyperproliferative and does not differentiate. What's that sound like? Cancer. So Andy, who's a real cell biologist, unlike me, started screening potential biological mechanisms for how cells get messed up and, let's say, turn into cancer.
Right.
And the most common one is the DNA of those cells gets hypermethylated. And that leads to a lot of childhood leukemias and other hematopoietic disorders. So again, smart Andy started screening anti-methylation or demethylation drugs or methylation inhibiting drugs. And he found one that completely restores the CP stem cells to basically typically developing stem cells, and they turn into muscle.
Oh my goodness.
And it's a drug that's FDA approved for kids who have blood cancers. And so he went into the detailed mechanism. I'm going to present his poster on it today. Detailed transcriptional profiling mechanism where basically the hypermethylation leads to premature cellular senescence, kind of oxidative damage, fibrosis, all the kinds of things we measure.
Yeah.
And then he showed several examples of that premature senescence and showed the reversal of all those things by this drug. So where we are now is we're obviously trying to understand the biology, but we are now doing a clinical trial. Because if this is an FDA-approved drug, we have partners. We all came from San Diego, so we have partners in San Diego. And we are just starting a dose escalation study where we give this drug to a child who's about to have surgery. And then I think it's a week before their surgery, let the drug do its thing, take a biopsy during surgery and see if we're doing anything to their cells. I mean, it's very possible we're starting at a very low dose. It's very possible we will get nothing until we start upping the dose. And it's even possible that we'll never be able to get it into the muscle. Because when you're doing these studies that are called repurposing studies for the FDA, you have to use the original method of dosing.
Oh, I see.
So we'd like to inject it right in the muscle like
yes,
Botox.
it's a different methodology, of
But that would require
delivery.
another clinical trial.
Okay.
So we're starting with basically a subcutaneous injection in the region of the muscle, and we'll see how it goes. But I am really excited at the possibility of a non-surgical correction of a contracture by repairing the muscle problem first and then doing all the therapeutic interventions. Because like once you fix the stem cells, you can stretch, exercise. There should be a lot of things you could do. I think that's what I'm most excited about.
Well, that's a good reason to be excited about that. When we talk about game changers, this is actually a proper, true game changer.
Truly.
You think about all the number of hours kids would spend strengthening and, all the parameters we want dosage-wise.
And not only that, the kids who get the treatments are the rich kids in developed countries, right? So what about these poor kids who are never going to see a surgeon for a contracture? We've tried to sell it to NIH. They don't like it. It's too speculative. And actually, honestly, it's a little bit boring biologically because these demethylating drugs have been around for 20 years.
Right.
That's why we like them. They're so safe. There's so much experience.
Sure.
We're actually collaborating with a childhood cancer expert at the University of Chicago. And this guy, he didn't even hesitate. He goes, "Oh, of course we should do this right away." But we talked to the orthopedic surgeons who have never seen an anti-cancer drug, and they go, "I don't think so.
Wow.
I don't think you're going to inject my kid."
Yes.
Because there are obviously side effects of anemia and things like that.
Okay.
But for us, it really is a game changer, a potential game changer. So we've gotten funding from actually the LSAS Foundation, who you've heard of here.
Just spoke to them.
Some of them. We've gotten money from a foundation in Chicago called Cures Within Reach, drug repurposing. We've recently got funding from the Washington Square Foundation. We're just cobbling together the funds to be able to. Oh, and the Falk Medical Trust. I don't know if you know them.
No, I don't.
They're a very interesting trust out of New York, and they just want stuff that's camera ready. Like, let's go.
Okay.
and they want a 1-year turnaround. So we said, here's a pitch. Give us this money. Give us 1 year, and we'll do this study. So we're getting there.
We're getting there. There's so much there. And in terms of, the possibilities and timelines, so people who are on the other side of this, listening to this podcast going, this is exciting. Where do you think, realistically?
So really, we have a promise to these foundations to finish our dose escalation study within a year. Okay. So in a year, we should know what the right dosing is.
Right.
Then we try something with it.
Yeah.
And the idea there would be to do at the appropriate dose, probably dose a bunch of children who aren't necessarily going to have surgery, but children who have contractures or pre-contractures. Right. And then combine that with stretching and exercise. Because actually exercise itself is a slight demethylator. Yeah. So we hypothesize that there could be a kind of an interaction between these. We proposed that to NIH and they said, this is boring. Of course, because they're geniuses. I'm not bitter. But we think that the demethylation plus a physiotherapeutic intervention is the key. And we hope to probably do that, maybe start it in a year-ish.
Gosh, that's music to my ears.
Yeah, isn't that great? Instead of 20 years of drug development.
Right. So what were your target population that you want to go to first to really, have you got a group in mind?
Well, yeah, but don't tell anyone. Hopefully this will really reach 5 people. I think in my mind, I think it would probably be a drug plus intervention test on adults with cerebral palsy. Yeah. Partly because they are so adapted, they're so shrewd. We talk to them all the time. Yeah. There's nothing being done for them, and they can give full consent. Yes. I've always been a little nervous about child assent and parent consent. Yep. So I think it will probably start with adults, and that's, over 18, people with contractures and cerebral palsy. And we should be able to do a pretty large study. The actual study, the drug's not expensive. It's at least not until they increase the price on us. The drug's not expensive. The intervention is simple. And there's therapists all over the country in the world who want to do this. Absolutely. I have friends, obviously, in a bunch of countries. Yeah. I think we might try to do, in fact, NIH what's today? Friday. Oh, today. NIH today put out a new RFA on a multi-center intervention trial. Okay. Now, they're not thinking CP because they think CP is a neural problem. So my institute, which is muscle,
Yeah.
thinks, why are you dealing with muscle?
Come on,
But
yeah.
we think we might be able to talk them into it.
Wow.
It's just so practical.
Yeah, yeah. Well, gosh, I think there's this is a true game changer, and I'm so excited to see where this is headed. And the fact that it's not 5, 10, 15 years down the track makes it even more tangible, and it's something to wait for. Really, it really truly is. So.
Yeah,
Thank you for doing the research.
Sure.
What a game changer. There's
Yeah.
no other word for it. Can you think of another word? I feel like I said that too many times.
I like that.
It's a good one.
I think it's a totally new paradigm. So
Yeah.
the paradigm is if the muscle is biologically inactivated, it really doesn't matter what we do. Now, we can do surgery to increase range of motion and improve functionality, but if the tissue itself won't grow
That's
and won't
right.
adapt,
Yeah.
we're stuck. And so, I'm a nerd muscle guy. My brain is always saying, like, how do muscles adapt?
Yes.
That's a different question than how do muscles in children with CP adapt?
Yes.
And I will tell you, we have a really good collaborator in the stroke space where we're getting a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
We see a lot of these same effects in muscles from stroke patients.
Yeah.
So it's not just that, and this is really speculative, but it's not just that muscles won't grow, because we think if children with CP are growing, their bones are growing, stretching the muscles, maybe the muscles can't go along with it.
Yeah.
But people with strokes are not growing, and yet they can get contractures too.
Yeah.
They do, right?
Yeah.
So there is some internal thing in the muscle that's not only not growing, but it's actually kind of trying to shorten.
Yeah.
There's a constant pressure to try to shorten. So this might be something that would affect stroke patients, which would then increase the market tremendously and get us lots of research grants.
Yes, fantastic. I mean, that's where we need to head, right?
Totally.
And I think when I've been talking to so many different researchers in different areas, there has been this big shift. Maybe it's more technology, maybe because we've done so much research now, we're at this place where we're looking at more of the root cause rather than symptomatic treatment. And
I mean, honestly, practically, it was funding.
Yeah.
So I remember vividly the day in 1997 when the chair of orthopedic surgery at Sahlgrenska University in Gothenburg told us, you should start looking at kids who have cerebral palsy. And I told my buddy, Jan Frieden, who's the hand surgeon, we know nothing about cerebral palsy. We can't do this. And she said, I think you really ought to do it. And I said to Jan, okay, let's take a look. And we didn't have any money to support it. We had this laser tool to measure sarcomeres. And when we looked, we instantaneously knew that the changes in that muscle were unlike anything we'd ever seen. And we've been doing it for 25 years.
yeah.
So I remember saying to him
Wow.
in the OR, this is a gold mine because there's nothing like this in the world.
Yeah.
And we've just kept cobbling support for it, recruiting people like Sudarshan Dayanidhi,
Yes.
Andy Dominighetti. Sudarshan was a PT.
I
in
know,
peds, so,
I know. I
so
was
he
like,
was fine.
what a change.
But Andy
Yeah.
was a regular old cell biologist.
Wow.
And he has turned into a great CP biologist. So there really, I'm sure you hear it all the time, there just isn't the support. So we beg, borrow, and steal to make it happen. And now I hope it works. And then we'll just say, it worked.
Well, we're very grateful for
My
you.
pleasure.
Very, very grateful. Thank you so much for your time. Gosh, guys, I'm sure you're all listening and very excited about where this is going to head. So tune in for more, but we'll talk to you all again really soon. Thanks so much, Rick.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.